Welcome to Digital Value Creation. This is the channel with my brother and me. My brother works at an AI-focused hardware company, and I work at an AI-focused software company. And we created this channel to discuss AI trends and how to drive impact at our work and our personal lives. And more importantly, how to stay ahead and future-proof our careers. So what's top of mind for you, brother?
Well, today is interesting day. It's been 2 years now since GPT-4 launched. I mean, it's hard to believe how much changed. And for me, I'm super happy to see that Google, who started it all with the Transformer white paper, just released their Gemini 2.5, which supposedly, it seems, outperforming both OpenAI and Anthropic models. So on one hand, it's amazing how much these models get better, more capable. On the other hand, I wonder how much changed. I mean, do companies really drive tangible value? And what are the areas? I know that you just came back from a CSO summit. I'm just curious, what did you hear? What others are doing? What companies are really, who are making strategic investments, see as a return on those investments?
So I want to come back to the summits I went to. But this is, you and I talk about this all the time. How much more AI do we need as individuals in our daily lives? I mean, GPT-4 did a lot, and I was pretty happy with what I could do with it 2 years ago. And now, we went through DeepSeek, we went through various Anthropic models, and now Gemini is out, and they finally got beyond the blue duck, which is great. But ultimately, the question is, do we need more AI for our personal use? And I'm almost at the point where I think I could just, for most of the tasks I'm doing, I think I would be fine with the most text-based models. In GPT-4, 4.5 is cool, and obviously 1.0 is awesome and all that. But at the end of the day, it looks cool.
It's interesting though, because I think, especially for personal use, the trend will shift. It's not about the best and the latest models. It's about how can you integrate it in our life. So I'm looking at super exciting. I just saw a demo where the latest AI glasses can do real-time synchronous translation. It's like, now that's interesting. And you don't need a GPT 4.5 or a reasoning model to do that. So some of these lighter weight models that are optimized for smaller form factors, I think will make a difference for personal use.
Yeah, it's interesting. A friend of mine is who always wanted to be a film producer or filmmaker, right? So for him, the new AI models with better text to video performance actually make a difference. So it depends on the individual use cases, and we'll talk about more of the business ones. But for my use, for text to text, basically kind of use case, it's limited. But then your point is well taken. So there could be edge cases, and it's interesting at our businesses. Most companies now have their own licenses for OpenAI or similar models, and all the companies are developing on top of them. Maybe they could just use the corporate license. I'm wondering if one day the same thing will happen. I'm already paying $20 a month here and $20 a month there. Why can't I just use my subscription to a single OpenAI model or Gemini model, what have you, and let all the other tools that are coming into our lives just tap into my subscription? So I'm wondering if that consolidation will ever happen. But going back to the question of events, it's very interesting. So I went to different summits. I went to a summit of chief strategy officers, and it was really interesting because they're not technologists. So it was a combination of strategies from across industries. And there were a lot of different discussions. I'll touch base on some of them. But one of the things that kept coming up, which also came up at a customer summit I recently went to at my company, is the nature of hype that exists in the tech industry. So one way, and because hype is a loaded word, but what it practically means is technology comes out ahead of its practical use. So we're making a big deal out of it, and we all do it. All of us are in technology, so we like to announce and bring to market solutions that really don't have a well-defined problems. And because I always lived in technology, you have too, I never thought about that being a problem. But then I ran into others that are from the pharma industry or chemical industry, and they're saying, listen, we would not come up with a possible drug saying, listen, we really don't know what it's good for. Why don't you go out and try it and see what it works? Find out use cases for this molecule we came up with. Or a chemical, like, here's a chemical compound we concocted. Why don't you take it out in the open and see how we can use it? But in the tech industry, we do this all the time. So I don't know if you think about this kind of stuff, but I do. It sort of bugs me that we do this. Instead of us going out and solving problems, which is what a pharmaceutical industry would do, or a chemical industry saying this is a compound that's needed in order to fix this kind of a problem, we generate a lot of technology seeking problems. I don't know how you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are amazing at creating solutions without defining the use case for them. and it's like, well, it can solve anything and everything. But because of that, I think this is why we have venture hype cycle. This is why we have booms and busts, because we overinvest in the potential. And a lot of times that potential just doesn't translate into tangible use cases, which, as you know, my pet peeve of how does that translate to real value creation? And especially right now, I mean, 2 years ago, ChatGPT changed everything, especially with GPT-4 that was mature. Now the next wave is agents. Like the notion that all of a sudden we will just start to trust enterprise processes with autonomous agents. I'm pretty sure that came up in your conference as well. What was the opinion there?
It's interesting. There was a lot of discussion because agents are everywhere right now, at least at this moment. And one of the interesting things, I was at the strategy forum, and there was one of the presenters came from a semiconductor company, not unlike yours, and his point is we're layering uncertainty on top of uncertainty. So we already have a challenge with the unexplainability or explainability problem with AI, with generative AI. We don't quite know how the algorithm works, or because it's not an algorithm, we don't know how the models really work. So we can't quite explain it, but we sort of like the outcome of it. So there was even a joke in the room saying, like, Igor, collect my money, but I don't need to know how you did it. It's almost how AI works, right? Like, perform this task, but I don't need to know, or perhaps you cannot know how you performed it. And his point was something in addition to that. So we're layering this kind of technology, and over time, the expectation, we're going to put AI on top of quantum computing because we're going to need a lot more compute. So it's a race for better and better, or more and more compute. One great source of compute is going to be quantum computing. But quantum computing, we don't even know where the electrons are, or the photons. We can't explain it at all. So if you layer uncertain compute, and on top of that you layer uncertain AI, you can't explain the world. So we're going to, and ultimately all of this agentic force, or whatever we're going to call it a year from now, is supposed to perform tasks. So it's going to be autonomous more and more. So we're building autonomous enterprises on top of unexplainable quantum computing and unexplainable generative models. So it's sort of, we're building the unexplainable enterprise. So that was one really thought-provoking discussion. So I thought it was pretty cool. I don't know. How do you think about that? You're in the hardware space.
Yeah, so build on that. Just attended a couple of CIO roundtables and AI forums, and the discussion is top of mind, especially for enterprise, because content creation is one thing where if something is not explainable, but we love the outcome, hey, we wanted to create the outcome. That was the whole purpose of content creation. Now, when we want AI to take action, make decisions, and execute with real life consequences, that's a whole different game. So we have a lot of discussion around how AI agents might create a renaissance on automation technologies or process orchestration, because all of a sudden you don't want to build uncertainty after uncertainty. You don't want one agent's unexplainable results used by another agent as an input and use whatever tool they do. And it's interesting because in the past, a lot of these models, LLM models, were necessarily creating just content, and you still had, let's say, Llama Index or some other orchestration layer that chained it together. But right now, most of the reasoning model has inherent agentic capabilities. So you have even less control. It's more of a black box. So what we discuss with my peers is how enterprise systems will need a balance. We call it hybrid AI, that need a balance between process controls, orchestration capabilities, and leverage AI in a way where uncertainty or unexplainability is within a certain risk tolerance. What was the solution that emerged, or besides just identifying a problem in your discussions?
Yeah, no, it's. I know you and I sort of settled on this term hybrid AI, which all of a sudden Anthropic uses that word for a slightly different purpose. But hybrid AI is a really good description for me in moving on this range from highly deterministic processes and highly probabilistic processes, or explainable and unexplainable range, right? So and I actually believe we need both. So it was interesting. I used to work for an RPA company. An RPA is supposed to be dead now, but if we think about it, there are many use cases where you actually need the if then else predictable RPA process, or some kind of a process flow that you exactly understand. It can follow standard operating procedures because that's what you do. So I was at a conference in Europe, at a customer conference, and I was with some banks, and they said, it's interesting because they think about this. So on one end of the spectrum, they need deterministic processes that are processing loans. You want the loans to process them. You process loans in a certain way because it's the law. You have to do it in a certain way. If you randomly have an agent make up a way of processing a loan and you violate some rules, that's going to be a problem. So you want to, one end of the spectrum, loan processing will have a very deterministic element where you follow the 7 steps that's prescribed by either by your policy or by law or a combination thereof. But then you have things like fraud detection. That is a fuzzy area because you don't know all the like you can't predetermine where fraud is going to happen because it's a cat and mouse game. But AI can get really good identifying edge cases where saying that looks fraudulent to me. And it could be anything as an image, or it could be a behavior. And this is the agents will get really good at, or AI, generally AI will get really good at learning and determining and identifying these kind of things. So your future process for loan processing, for example, will have a combination of the two. And that's the hybrid AI nature. So you don't want to let loose an agent saying, hey, just go crazy. But maybe there's going to be something that orchestrates it all, and there's going to say, for this process, I'm going to use more deterministic way of doing certain elements of it, and probably more unexplainable or probabilistic way using Gen AI or AI agents that I don't even know what they're going to do. They don't have a goal, like identify if this document is fraudulent. That's your assignment as an agent. You find a way to execute that task. That would be a goal-seeking agentic performance, versus process the loan following these 7 steps. So these are the kinds of things we talked about. I thought it was very interesting because I think we in tech industry have a tendency to just say, hey, everything's going to be using the latest technology, and that's not the case. Yeah, so that's what I'm finding. And there was an interesting thing as it relates to all of this, because I was in Europe. So Europe has an AI directive that's very strict. So it requires explainability, data protection. It has a lot of attributes that's sort of counter to a self-determined, goal-seeking, agentic kind of AI. So unless the law changes, I think there's going to be inherent conflict where you can't explain it, you can't prove that data was protected. So you have one of two choices, and this came up in discussions. Either you dial down, you create these guardrails. It's a very popular term. So let's put guardrails on the AI. And when you put guardrails on AI, all you're doing is you're putting AI into more of a deterministic corner. You're going to say, I know it's exactly how it's going to perform, which is fine, but then it's not the AI you're trying to unleash. It's not using the latest capability of probabilistic goal-seeking kind of agentic. So I'm wondering, how do you think about those two ends of the spectrum? And maybe you think about, I don't know, around your company, if you can talk about it, like where you seeing into the role of different, more deterministic or probabilistic AI.
Very similar, not just in my company. As I said, that was top of mind forum because everybody wants to take advantage of finally going beyond content creation because well, content creation creates value, and I know we discussed before this call the latest McKinsey survey, which is super insightful. What domains are really adopting AI? And not surprisingly, initially it started with the content-rich domains. But as we go beyond that, you need some of these agentic capabilities. So it's more about the focus on this orchestration layer, focus on how can you have checkpoints in the process so the uncertainties don't multiply, but you will have a chance to drive deterministic process elements. So we are looking at some legal processes where we do a lot of content creation, but there is a check. We do, especially code generation is fantastic for us because you can have actually test included in the process. So, which is why we see a lot of potential of code generation, not just tests, but complete orchestration, because the tool itself can have checkpoints. You don't need necessarily human in the middle. But I know that you were passionate about some of the other insights from the survey. What strike you that
Yes.
that
So
there's an
we'll
important
drop.
takeaway?
Yeah, we'll drop the survey link in here because I certainly want to avoid the cease and desist from McKinsey. So we'll provide the link in the show notes. But there were a couple of really interesting insights. One is, so this was a survey. This is brand new when we shoot this video, brand new in March 2025. And this is their annual survey on AI. This is done by Quantum Black, the AI unit of McKinsey. And what I like about this is just the size of the survey. So about 1,500 companies involved. And they look at something, I don't know who else does it, they have consistently done it around automation and AI now, is trying to figure out where the technology can have realistic business impact. So that's sort of the angle I always liked about these surveys. So they look into one thing in this survey. They surveyed the company, said what percentage of your companies are using AI in a certain segment, and they look at this by industry and by business function. And it was actually surprising to me because the number one use case for generative AI use across industries is sales and marketing. And I did not expect that, actually, by far. So in the technology industry itself, 55% of the companies saying we are using generative AI in sales and marketing. And maybe all of this is copywriting for all we know, or some agency work. But it's still a very high percentage. Some of the things that I expected, for example, in software engineering or IT code generation, which is very common, is about 30% of the companies said we're using that. In the tech industry, across the board, it was varied. So I thought that was very interesting. It was very low in financial services, which is an industry that's very focused on rolling their own. There's a massive engineering resources typically in a financial services industry, in banking or insurance. So that was surprising to me. But across the board, there was a lot in product development, which again was surprising to me. In product development in professional services, I assume this could be methodologies or surveys or whatever consultants do. I forgot, it was 20 years ago. So that was really interesting. A ton in knowledge management. Again, in professional services, 40% of the consultants said we use AI for knowledge management. And I want to come back to it because you have a really good observation on this based on what you and I talked about. But it's really interesting. I suggest that listeners and viewers look at this survey just to help them guide, like, what are the areas. The top three is, again, it's sales and marketing, customer service, and IT or software engineering. So when you're looking for your AI use cases, that's where I would start across industries, because that's clearly where the survey shows companies are adopting. And you're going to find in the survey also, they're pointing out is there are companies that are using 4, 5, 6 different business processes are basically Gen AI enabled, which is high. So it's no longer just experimentation in one unit, it's spreading across companies. So it's a pretty good thing. But I want to come back to knowledge management because you had a really interesting view on where Gen AI helps in careers or in personal development, and depending on where you are in your stage of of your career. So what were you thinking on that?
Actually, before I answer that, just want to confirm what you observe on a survey as well, because this is actually how our company started as well. We started in marketing and sales, which is it's very content heavy, and you need to be adaptive. Time is always at the essence. And then for us, one of the major breakthrough and very significant success was around customer engineering, which is dealing with hundreds of thousands of use cases that we need to respond to. And then it went into software, which led me to think about how comes IT and engineering, who technically pioneers these technologies, were not the first one adopting it. And here is an interesting observation we have seen, where these Gen AI solutions really create value on kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. And what I mean by that is, I'm a big believer of strength-based leadership. We were taught that if you really want to multiply your impact, focus on your strength and delegate your weaknesses, which to some extent works, and sometimes you need to compensate for your weaknesses or learn it. And what we have seen, that some of the early coding models really did not resonate with our top developers, because they created code snippet. There was some improvement in performance, not a true breakthrough. So they felt that it did not really help them in their strength area. It was helpful, not a breakthrough. But we've seen that changing in the last 3-4 months. I mean, I don't know, as viewers or listeners, whether you played with either Anthropic Sonnet 3.7, which was, until today, the Gemini release, the best in coding, but more importantly, some of the open source tools that are built on the top of it, like Klein, where you can actually describe a problem in generic terms, and Klein will find the right library. Actually, is a fully automatic agentic approach to AI, where it coordinates all the work, from research to development to some testing, to really create a fully functioning code. And this is where the light bulb went on for some of our leading developers, that, oh, this is no longer just code snippets or helping me create something. Now I can move from developer to product manager. All of a sudden, I can now build on my strength that I know how to architect, and I can use this agentic AI to create a solution. But since I'm the expert, I can very quickly identify issues, problems, and iterate very rapidly. It's almost like I just inherited a team. So that's where we saw that right now these tools reach the level of maturity where you can really build on them to extend your strength. Now, the other part of the spectrum is still true. Some of our more beginner developers actually leveraged AI earlier than the experts, because for them, some of those code snippets, how I best code an algorithm, if I need to migrate from one programming language to, let's say, Angular, how I do that, that was super helpful for them. So what we find is, really, if somebody is new to an area, needed to learn a new language, or wrote up to a new code base, that was very helpful. Now the technology is at the level where if you're a top expert, it can really help you to elevate your career from like developer to product manager, but you still have a knowledge to provide oversight to make sure that the AI generates. So for me, that was super interesting, that now we are at the point where you can really delegate to AI, both to accelerate your strength and also to help you compensate your weaknesses. So super excited.
Yeah, it's interesting, and maybe we can close on this note and like how people take that away, because I have a daughter that's leaving college and she wants to get ready for a new job, and I think I wish I had tools like this where you could just be. I don't think you become an expert, but you could be productive very quickly with AI tools, which just wasn't available. I don't remember how we got up to speed when we had a new job. Probably like struggling, reading books. I don't know what we did. So what do you think it means for somebody's professional career? Where our usual comment on that?
I mean, for me, you just get a built-in consultant. I mean, it's funny because sometimes our team want to bring in a consultant to even just frame up a problem or analyze a story. And I'm just not approving those type of consulting. These phase zero engagements, I think they are dead. But basically, each of us now have an ability to look at a domain that maybe we are not an expert on, we need to learn from, or we need to get up to speed and be credible, and have basically a consultant available for us. Not like any consultant, sometimes they make up stuff and sometimes they are not accurate. But from zero to a good understanding, I think it's a phenomenal career tool.
I think so too. So maybe, I know we keep saying this, I think, in this channel, that we're going to come back to the toolkits we do use, because both of us use get up to speed tools. I know at our company now, the entire company uses basically one of the research tools, which we like. It's u.com. It's not a plug, but just before you open your mouth, please research the topic you're about to talk about. It's helpful. I think it levels the playing field. So, and oftentimes, it's a really interesting observation. Maybe it's my closing one. I mean, none of us are experts in everything. So when I talk to different department and I'm not an expert in their area, I use AI tools, like make me knowledgeable enough for this conversation. So this is a topic I don't talk about. It's important to them. I get up to speed, so at least I'm not an idiot on the call. So there are really interesting average daily use cases where we can, I mean, at the end of the day, we can communicate better if we have a sidebar. So maybe we'll dig into that next time. But for now, we can close out like we usually do. Philadelphia is out.
And San Diego is out. See you next time.